So what about with sobriety, bro? How bad did it get for you, Royce? When you say, man, you know what? Like you gotta, no pun intended, but crash the car before you really realize what's going on.
Yeah, well, see, with me, I literally crashed the car first. I literally crashed the car first. That was my first drinking and driving offense. I crashed the car. And the second thing that happened was I went to jail for a year for another drinking and driving offense for a year, right in smack dab in the middle of my
Everything's happening.
professional career. The third thing was I reached a point where it felt like a rock bottom, another rock bottom for me. And the problem with that was it wasn't a financial rock bottom for me.
Right.
At that moment, it was actually a financial high. I was doing well financially, but I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good at all. So I just got tired of everything, all the mistakes and things being made and everything being alcohol being the common denominator for everything.
What would you tell someone who maybe quite possibly be questioning whether or not they should get sober if they do have a problem? What's some advice that you could give them?
I would probably say if you have to question it, then that's pretty problematic.
Yeah.
Pretty problematic, and that's something to look at. And if you are questioning it, that's a great thing because you're letting yourself know that you have the strength to get somewhere close to at least admitting it. That's one of the things that Marshall told me. You know, when I called him and I told him that I was stopping, and he was like, "Listen, that's number one. That's the realest thing that you've ever said to me."
Was he?
He was already sober.
Sober, yeah.
And he was like, "I need for you to understand that where you are right now today, you're at your strongest because you're finally willing to admit that you're powerless over this, and that's a strength. That's not a weakness. Most people would feel like it's a weakness because you're like, oh man, I feel like, but no, it's liberating.
Yeah.
You know, so I would say that to that person, you're taking a step in the right direction."
My name is Hanief Saterfield with Sobriety in Black. In this clip, we got to check out Royce the 5'9", discussing his road to sobriety, what led him to it, and he gives a little bit of advice for people that may be thinking about taking the same path. He first started off by talking about how he ended up coming to the decision to go sober and the things that happened in his life. He mentioned three things. He first mentioned crashing a car, which if you're an alcoholic for any length of time, chances are, like myself, you have crashed a car or maybe two, gotten a DUI. He said he got his first DUI when he crashed the car. He ended up getting another DUI and having to sit in jail for a whole year. And at the time that he did this, he was, in the middle of his career. He had already started. He was the Royce the 5'9", if you will. And so he had to sit out and miss out on a whole year's worth of money, touring, fun, everything that comes with being, a world famous rapper. Then he comes back, gets out, still continues to drink. But then he said, the third thing that had happened that led him looking towards a path of sobriety was he felt empty, didn't feel good. But at the time, and the interesting thing he brought up was the fact that at this time, he wasn't broke. It wasn't like he was broke, destitute, and alcohol led him to lose everything. And, he was living under a bridge. At the time, he actually says that he was, filthy rich, had all his money. And one thing that you notice is he talked about it almost as if the fact that he had this money was a problem. And I think that's because when money is good, you think that you're almost invincible. Fact of the matter was, even though he had all of this money and all the money that he needed, and he had the cars, the house, the fame, and all of this, he still felt empty, like he was at rock bottom. And he, in fact, was at rock bottom. One thing he said that was interesting was that when it came to the issues he had in his life, he called alcohol the common denominator. When he used, that's when most of his problems came. And that's usually the case with most alcoholics. When we're sober, we may have issues, but they're definitely magnified when we start to drink. Once he was able to admit that he was powerless over becoming intoxicated and powerless over alcohol, he was able to strengthen himself. And that's something I like that he mentioned in this interview, was that admitting that he was powerless was one of the most powerful things he could do. Even Eminem told him, the fact that you could admit that this is an issue and an issue you're ready to take head on, that is the most empowering thing you can do for your life. And you are stronger now than you ever were in the midst of your alcoholism. In my book, Sobriety in Black, I talk about the 12 superpowers of sobriety and having control over your emotions, control over your destiny, and taking it back from alcohol, which when introduced to an alcoholic takes control of your destiny, takes control of your life. When you take that power back, you are that much stronger and you get back to being the real you when you're living an alcohol-free life. Lastly, he was asked if he had any advice for people thinking about quitting alcohol. What Royce the 5'9" said was poignant. He said, if you have considered it, the fact that you're even considering it means that there are things that have happened in your life that have been significant enough for you to consider getting rid of alcohol from your life completely. And if that is the case, it is a road you might as well travel. It is a road that will benefit you. In the end, you already know that it'll benefit you. And what I'm here to tell you, and I talk about this in my book, is you're not gonna lose anything. Because guess what? Just like Royce the 5'9" said in this interview, there was a time where you lived a fulfilling life without alcohol. So you can actually get back to that. And there are a lot of things that you have to gain. You really don't have anything to lose. And it's just a matter of taking the steps. And the first step is to just begin. Admit that you need to go ahead and get rid of it. Admit that there's no real substantial benefit from being intoxicated. There's no benefit from being dependent on alcohol. And admit that the strength for you to even consider it and for you to admit that is a power. It is a power, and it is you taking back control of your life. And so I hope that this interview with Royce the 5'9" pours into you, gives you something to think about. Here's somebody who, wasn't drinking because he was broke and depressed, had all the money in the world, could travel, doing what he loves to do, create beautiful music. He has all of this, and he still was able to admit, alcohol has a control over me and I need to get rid of it because I'm powerless of dealing with alcohol in my life. So it's something for you to think about. Definitely check out the full interview. I'll leave a link in the description. I appreciate Big Boy TV for interviewing Royce. He's one of the greatest rappers to ever live, hands down. One of the greatest duos to ever live in Prime. If you haven't checked out any of his music, top notch. Definitely suggest you do that. So I hope you like this episode of Sober Celebrities. If there's a sober celebrity out there that you'd like me to cover and give some commentary on, feel free to leave a comment. Share this with somebody that may be sober curious, or maybe they just need some encouragement to keep on, to go another day. Don't worry about 5 years from now, how long it's gonna take to be sober. Worry about not drinking for the next minute, the next second, the next hour, the next day. Take it one day at a time. My name is Hanief Saterfield with Sobriety in Black in this episode of Sober Celebrities. And until next time, peace.